The office was so quiet you could hear the AC hum when the HR notification slid onto my screen like a blade. Effective immediately, your department has been reassigned. I blinked once, then twice. No, this wasn't real. But then the second email came, then the third. Every single member of my team, analysts, my designers, my coordinators, were suddenly moved under someone else. Then I heard his voice. "You don't need a team anymore, Nina." My boss, Daniel Harlan, leaned against my desk. "Consider this a restructuring." The smirk on his lips was the kind people wore right before they enjoyed watching a fire burn. "I built that team," I whispered. "We know," he said. "That's why I'm taking them." The whole floor watched silently. No one breathed. My legs shook under the desk. My throat tightened. I felt stripped, humiliated, cut open in front of everyone. And then he ended with the sentence that cut deepest. "Try not to take this personally. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from so we know we're not alone on this. Please like, subscribe, and drop a comment." My name was Nina Ariston. I was 30 years old, and until that morning I'd been the youngest team lead in the company's history. I had earned everything I had. I'd studied until sunrise. I'd handled crying staff members. I'd saved multi-million-dollar accounts from collapsing. And I'd trusted my boss more than I should have. 3 weeks from that day, something would happen that no one, not even him, saw coming. But for now, all I knew was this. In a single morning, I became a leader with 0 people to lead. My calendar was suddenly empty. My meetings were canceled. My project folders showed access denied when I tried to open them. I sat at my desk staring at the blank screen, feeling like a ghost in my own office. People walked past without making eye contact. I'd gone from respected to invisible in the span of one email. And the worst part, I had no idea why. The office didn't return to normal. Everywhere I walked, people whispered around their coffee cups. No one looked me in the eye for more than a second. It felt like attending my own funeral. When I sat at my desk, my chair suddenly felt too big, my computer screen too bright, my soul too small. I tried to open a file, one of the strategy documents I'd been working on for weeks. Access removed. I tried again. Still blocked. Harlan hadn't just taken my team. He'd taken my tools, my permissions, my authority. He'd left me breathing, but barely. I looked around the open plan office, searching for someone who might acknowledge what had just happened. But everyone kept their heads down, typing furiously, pretending not to notice. I felt like I was drowning in plain sight while everyone pretended the water was fine. My hands trembled as I closed my laptop. This wasn't just a reassignment. This was erasure. Her name was Cassandra Cole. The woman Harlan chose to replace me. You could hear her heels before you saw her. Tap, tap, tap. She wore a red blazer too loud for a workplace that was supposed to be conservative, but her confidence made everyone pretend it wasn't. She stopped at my former department's door and announced loudly, "Team, let's meet. We need a fresh direction." Fresh direction, my words, my style, my soul repackaged into someone else. I felt physically sick. She swept into the conference room with my team trailing behind her like obedient ducklings. Through the glass walls, I watched her point at the whiteboard, gesturing enthusiastically. She was using my presentation deck, the one I'd spent 2 months perfecting. My strategies, my research, my insights, but now they were hers. And my team, people I'd mentored, trained, defended, nodded along as if I'd never existed. I turned away before anyone could see the tears forming. I tried to convince myself I didn't care, but I did because I knew this wasn't random. For months, Harlan had been acting strange, asking for project copies he didn't need, calling my team members individually, going through accounts I usually handled, questioning decisions he'd previously praised. Now I understood he'd been preparing for this. He hadn't just stolen my team. He'd planned it. I pulled up my email archive and started searching. There they were, dozens of small requests that seemed innocent at the time. "Can you send me that client file? Mind if I sit in on your team meeting? Just want to understand your process better." He'd been studying me, learning my methods, copying my playbook. And once he had everything he needed, he'd simply cut me out. The realization made my stomach turn. This wasn't corporate politics. This was calculated betrayal. 3 days into my humiliation, a message arrived from our company's biggest account, Larson International Logistics. They wanted revisions on the upcoming annual strategy. Normally, that was my job, but now Cassandra had the team. Still, something in my gut told me not to step aside, so I drafted my own proposal. Alone. Quietly. working late into the night in my strip-down role, using what limited access I still had. I poured everything into that document, every insight, every innovation, every relationship-building technique I'd developed over 3 years with Larson. I sent it with a note, just in case you want an alternative option. I didn't expect a reply. My hand hovered over the mouse for a long moment before I hit send. Part of me whispered that I was wasting my time, that they'd already moved on. But I couldn't let go. Not yet. 17 minutes later, they responded. We prefer Nina's direction. Can we schedule a call with her directly? My heart almost stopped. On the video call, the Larson representative, Marcus Webb, leaned forward and lowered his voice. Why weren't you on the original team distribution? I swallowed hard. There's been some restructuring. He exchanged a look with another executive on the screen. That's strange, he muttered. Your work is the reason we stayed with this company. I blinked, stunned. No one had ever said that out loud. I'd always assumed my contributions were valued, but hearing it confirmed, especially now, felt like oxygen after drowning. Then Marcus added, just continue sending things directly to us. We trust your judgment. This was the first crack in Harlan's plan. After the call ended, I sat in the empty conference room staring at the blank screen. For the first time in days, I didn't feel invisible. Someone still saw me. Someone still valued my work. And that changed everything. When Cassandra found out the client requested me, she stormed into my cubicle. Stop interfering, she snapped. Your role is undefined and you're causing confusion. I didn't look up from my computer. Larson asked for me, she scoffed, only because they don't know the new structure yet. But her eyes flickered, just for a second, with fear. Because she knew, clients didn't ask for someone unless they trusted them, and trust wasn't something you could reassign with an email. She stood there for a moment longer, waiting for me to back down. When I didn't, she turned sharply and walked away, her heels clicking aggressively against the tile floor. I heard her speaking to Harlan in his office a few minutes later. Their voices were muffled, but the tension was clear. I'd become a problem they hadn't anticipated. And problems, I was learning, had a way of exposing weak foundations. Harlan called me into his office later that afternoon. Nina, he said, his tone fake gentle, stop trying to revive your old position. I'm just working, I said softly. No, you are undermining the new order. I stared at him, searching his face for any hint of the mentor I'd once respected. Why are you doing this? He inhaled deeply, leaned back in his leather chair, and said something that made my blood run cold. You were becoming too popular. My heart froze. This company, he continued, needs people who follow, not people who shine. The words hung in the air like poison, so that was it. He hadn't reassigned me because I was failing. He'd done it because I was succeeding, because clients asked for me by name, because my team looked to me for guidance, because I'd built something real, something valuable, something that threatened his position. I left his office in silence, my hands clenched into fists. That night, I received another email from Larson. Private meeting, off record, tomorrow, I went. The meeting was held at a neutral location, a small conference room in a co-working space downtown. Marcus and 2 other executives sat across from me, their expressions serious. Then they showed me something that made my stomach drop, copies of strategy files, files I'd never approved, files that were wrong, files that carried my signature. My breath vanished. These were sent to us last week, Marcus said quietly. We almost acted on them, but the numbers didn't match your usual standards, so we double-checked. Harlan had forged documents with my name. If the client hadn't been vigilant, my reputation would have been destroyed. But now there was evidence, and they handed it to me. We thought you should know, Marcus said. Someone's trying to sabotage you. We suspected internal sabotage, Marcus continued, and we believe your reassignment was part of it. I felt cold all over. He slid a folder toward me. Inside were emails intercepted by their IT security system, showing Harlan trying to redirect Larson to another consulting firm for a commission. He tried to sell us off, Marcus said flatly, but your reports kept saving the account. That's why we trust you. My chest tightened as I flipped through the pages. There it was in black and white, Harlan negotiating with a competitor, promising to deliver Larson as a client in exchange for a percentage of the first year's revenue. He was willing to betray the company, betray me, betray everything for money. And when I became an obstacle to that plan, he'd simply removed me. Everything made sense now. The sudden reassignment, the forged documents, the smear campaign. He wasn't just protecting his ego. He was protecting a criminal scheme. Do not confront him yet, Marcus warned. Let us handle the business angle. You continue working quietly. My mind raced. I wasn't just fighting for a team. I was fighting for my entire career, for my name, for my dignity. So I stayed silent, worked silently, gathered everything. I started documenting every interaction, every email, every suspicious move Harlan made. I backed up files to personal drives. I saved screenshots. I built a case as carefully as I'd once built strategies. Sometimes revenge wasn't loud. Sometimes it was slow, steady, crawling through shadows until the perfect moment. And I could feel that moment approaching. The air in the office was changing. People were starting to notice the cracks. Cassandra was struggling. The team was confused. And Harlan was getting nervous. I could see it in the way he watched me across the office, trying to figure out what I knew. The company had an upcoming performance showcase meeting, a quarterly event where every department head presented their achievements. Cassandra insisted on presenting the Larson account strategy. My work she barely understood. I watched from the back row as she opened the slides. The room fell silent. She stumbled. Lines didn't match. Data contradicted itself. Charts made no sense. People whispered, "What is this? This is messy. She's not prepared." One of the senior vice presidents interrupted. "Cassandra, can you explain this projection? It doesn't align with the previous quarter." She fumbled with her notes, face reddening. I believe this was based on," she trailed off, realizing she had no answer. Harlan kept glancing at me from across the room as if daring me to react. I didn't move. I sat perfectly still, expression neutral. Let them choke on their own decisions. Let them see what happened when you replaced competence with ego. At night, I received one line from Marcus. "This is falling apart without you." I stared at those 6 words for a long time. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated. Another part just felt sad that it had come to this. Sad that good work was being destroyed by greed, but mostly I felt determined, because I knew what was coming next, and I knew I was ready. I drafted a detailed report, everything I discovered about Harlan's scheme, the forged documents, the client poaching attempt. I sent it to Marcus with a simple note. "When you're ready to present this to leadership, let me know." His response came within minutes. "Next week, board meeting. Be prepared to testify." I closed my laptop and allowed myself a small smile. 3 weeks. That's how long it had taken for the truth to start clawing its way to the surface. 3 weeks after the reassignment, everything exploded. Larson requested an emergency executive meeting. Every senior manager attended, including the CEO. They sat with straight faces as Marcus began his presentation. "We want to discuss the future of our partnership," he said calmly. Everyone waited. "Specifically," he continued, "we want only one contact for our account, permanently." The room held its breath. Then Marcus looked directly at me. "We want Nina Ariston." The room froze. Harlan's face turned ghost white. Cassandra coughed, choking on her water. Someone dropped a pen. The sound echoed in the sudden silence, and then Marcus slid the forged documents onto the conference table. "We also need to discuss these." The CEO picked up the papers, his expression darkening as he read. Harlan opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The trap had sprung, and there was no escape. "Explain this," the CFO demanded, throwing the papers at Harlan. "My signature forged, my work stolen. My authority stripped, plus emails showing he'd tried to sell the company's biggest client for personal profit." Harlan stuttered. I can explain." "No," the CEO said coldly. "You can resign effective immediately." The room remained deathly quiet. No one defended him. No one spoke on his behalf. The man who'd wielded so much power, who destroyed my career with a single email, now stood exposed and powerless. He gathered his things slowly, avoiding everyone's eyes. As he walked toward the door, he glanced at me once. I held his gaze. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply stared back, letting him see that I'd survived what he'd tried to do to me. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and just like that, he was gone. Cassandra tried to distance herself. I had no idea about any of this, but Marcus cut her off. "You presented stolen work, inaccurately. You claimed credit for strategies you didn't understand." The CEO turned to her. "We're conducting a full review of your department's activities. Until then, you're suspended." She opened her mouth to protest, then closed it. She'd played the game thinking she was protected by Harlan's power, but power built on lies doesn't last. She grabbed her bag and left without another word. 2 weeks later, I heard she'd resigned before they could fire her. The team she'd inherited, My team was left directionless once again. But this time, I knew exactly what needed to happen, and so did the leadership. HR called me in the next morning. I walked to their office with my heart pounding, unsure what to expect. The HR director, Patricia Monroe, gestured to a chair. "Nina, would you be willing to lead the entire department?" My heart stuttered. "Lead all of it?" "Yes, effective immediately. Full authority, full team, full budget." She slid a formal offer letter across the desk. "We should have protected you better. We're sorry it took this long to see what was happening." I looked down at the paper at the title printed in bold, Director of Strategic Client Relations. It was 2 levels above where I'd been. I thought about everything I'd lost, everything I'd fought for, everything I'd endured, and I realized sometimes you have to be torn down before you can be rebuilt into something stronger. "Yes," I said, "I'll do it." I moved into the office that once belonged to Harlan. His furniture, his desk, his view of the city skyline, but now my name on the door. I stood in the empty office for a moment, taking it in. The space felt different than I'd imagined. Not triumphant, not vengeful, just right. Like I'd finally stepped into a role I'd been preparing for all along. I sat in the chair and opened my laptop. There was work to do, a team to rebuild, trust to restore, a client relationship to strengthen. But for the first time in weeks, I felt capable of doing it, because I wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. I was building something new, and this time no one could take it from me. One by one, my former team members came to my new office. Some apologized, some cried, some admitted they'd felt pressured to go along with the reassignment even though it felt wrong. I listened to each of them, and then I said the same thing to everyone. "I understand, and I forgive you." Not for them, for myself. Because a leader didn't hold grudges. A leader built. We held a team meeting that afternoon. I stood at the front of the room and looked at the faces I'd once known so well. "We're starting fresh," I said. "No blame, no resentment, just good work. Are you with me?" The response was immediate. Nods, murmurs of agreement, even a few relieved smiles. We were going to be okay, better than okay. We were going to be stronger than before. The CEO called a full company assembly the following week. The entire office gathered in the main conference hall. He stood at the podium and cleared his throat. "Let this be a lesson," he began. "Talent cannot be buried, integrity cannot be replaced, and some employees are the backbone of an entire company." Then he looked straight at me, standing in the crowd. "Nina Ariston is one of those employees. Her dedication saved our most valuable client relationship and exposed serious misconduct that could have destroyed this company." The applause started slowly, then built into something overwhelming. People I barely knew were clapping. Colleagues were smiling at me. For the first time since the reassignment, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, truly seen, and it was the best feeling in the world. A week later, Marcus visited our office personally. He shook my hand and said something I'd never forget. "You saved us, you saved your company, and you saved yourself." Then he smiled. "We don't just want to work with you, we want a long-term partnership exclusively through you, 5-year contract, full strategic collaboration." My chest warmed. This was the justice I hadn't known I needed. Not revenge, not vindication, just recognition, just respect. Just the simple truth that good work, done with integrity, eventually finds its way to the light. We signed the contract that afternoon. It was the largest deal in the company's history, and my name was on every page. Word spread quickly that Harlan had tried applying to competitor firms. None accepted him. Marcus had quietly shared the forged documents across industry networks. Harlan's reputation was destroyed. He'd become unemployable in the field he'd spent 20 years building. He tried calling me once. I saw his name on my screen and felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just indifference. I let it go to voicemail. I never listened to the message. Some people didn't deserve closure. Some people just needed to fade into the irrelevance they'd earned. And that was enough. I took the position of Director of Strategic Client Relations with everything it offered. Bigger office, bigger salary, bigger influence. And every time I walked past the floor where I'd once felt small, invisible, humiliated, I remembered. People only stole what they feared, and Harlan had feared me. He'd feared my competence, my relationships, my potential. So he'd tried to bury me. But you can't bury someone who refuses to stay down. 6 months later, I was promoted again to Vice President, the youngest VP in company history. My team had grown to 30 people, And every single one of them knew I'd fight for them the way I'd fought for myself, because that's what real leaders did. If you've ever had someone try to erase you, replace you, sabotage you, remember this: you are not done. You are not defeated. You are not replaceable. Sometimes the people who try to bury you are the ones who end up digging their own graves. Never dim your light. Shine so brightly that even your enemies can't look away. Because the truth has a way of surfacing. Integrity has a way of winning. And talent, real talent, can never be reassigned. It can only be recognized or ignored. And when it's ignored, it finds another way to shine. I learned that the hard way, but I learned it well. And now, every time I walk into my office, I remember, I didn't just survive, I thrived. And so can you. Like and subscribe for more stories like this.